Major League Baseball has a serious problem on their hands. At least 13 players and coaches in the Miami Marlins organization tested positive for COVID-19, and this is solely a problem with baseball. Unlike the NBA, Major League Soccer, the WNBA, and the UFC, baseball has elected not to have a bubble right now during the coronavirus pandemic. The only difference in baseball is that a couple people in the dugout are wearing masks. Players aren't shaking hands. They're kicking their ankles and stuff instead. And they're not having any fans at the stadium. But other than that, the teams are traveling and moving about from state to state, city to city, playing other teams in their home stadiums and their dugouts, just as if this was a normal season, and it's completely not a normal season, and now baseball is paying for it. More on YouTube to come. Yesterday, the Marlins played the Phillies. They won 11-6. They played in Philadelphia, and 3 players tested positive for coronavirus. Now, since then, 7 more players today and 2 coaches have tested positive for coronavirus. And it turns out that the team's games will be canceled tonight. The Marlins against the Orioles and the Yankees against the Phillies will be canceled tonight after the Phillies were playing the Marlins yesterday when so many of their players and a couple coaches tested positive for COVID-19. This is such a problem with baseball because they set their league up this year to where they're still traveling from stadium to stadium, from state to state. They're getting on airplanes, they're getting on buses, they're doing the whole thing that they normally would. The only difference in baseball is that a couple people are wearing masks in the dugout and they're not shaking hands and there's no fans at the stadium. But outside of that, the rest of travel and all that stuff in baseball is the same, and now they're paying for it. We've seen a bubble in MLS and in the NBA, and the NBA tested 364 players, and 0 had the coronavirus. Now we've got at least 13 people on one team in Major League Baseball who have COVID-19. It's simply the fact that they are not in a bubble. The Toronto Blue Jays, Canada's not even letting their own baseball team play in Toronto. They have to play in Buffalo because Canada's not allowing them to do all this travel and keep coming in and out of the country. They're not allowing it. But the MLB is allowing it within the United States, and here we have a problem. So now the Marlins have multiple players and a couple coaches with COVID-19, and they're supposed to play the Phillies tonight. Now that game has to be canceled. So can it be rescheduled? We don't know. They sent out a whole packet of rules and regulations that baseball was going to abide by, but it's clear from multiple players and reporters that Major League Baseball doesn't have a plan for a breakout of this stature. When we're talking 7 more players and 2 coaches this morning, on top of 3 players on Sunday who already tested positive for COVID-19, this is what they would call a mini breakout, and the only reason it's not farther than that, and it could be because they played the Phillies last night on Sunday. So now all those Philadelphia players need to go get tested. A couple of them might have COVID-19. We start getting into, okay, is this travel still going to work for baseball? Right now, this is a very scary time for baseball fans, for baseball players, because we're looking at a situation where the season, at least as we know it right now, could be put to a halt. I don't know how they're going to have the Marlins continue to play games when multiple of their players and coaches have COVID-19. Those players can quarantine, but the rest of the team needs to get tested. They've all been around each other. Philadelphia was at the game also, obviously, running past each other, sweating, whatever. So who knows who has the coronavirus in Philadelphia, so they can't play tonight. But the point is that these are 2 teams that are basically out of business right now. They're out of business. And we saw in soccer, they kicked Dallas out of the MLS tournament. They kicked them out because they had too many positive COVID-19 tests. And if they brought them into the bubble, then everybody in the bubble could have got COVID-19. Well, baseball doesn't have a bubble, so they're able to quarantine on their own. But the problem is that how do they resume traveling and playing baseball games right now? I don't know if it's possible. But this is all on the MLB commissioner. And the players are coming out like David Price, who elected not to play this season. They're coming out and they're keeping it real. And they're saying that the MLB never put the players ahead of baseball. They never put the players' health ahead of baseball during these contract negotiations. They were so worried about the number of games, Who was getting paid what? The players were worried about that too. Rightfully so, with all the health risks that we're clearly seeing. They were worried about money, scheduling, number of games. It didn't seem to ever be a huge idea to maybe have a baseball bubble in one or two ballparks. I've been told that there was an idea that they could have a bubble in Arizona and a bubble in Florida, and people could travel back and forth between the two of them. Players didn't want to play at those, maybe because Arizona and Florida were too hot during the summer. I don't know. Point is, the commissioner didn't install a bubble for baseball. So now we're in a situation where the coronavirus has hit baseball. Players who have it can't travel. Coaches who have it can't travel. So now the whole team has to be put on halt because we don't know if the entire team has it or if just these 13 people have it, because it's probably more than that. There's probably some in Philadelphia also. These numbers, these 13 plus players, is just in Miami. It's just in the Marlins organization. It could be a lot farther than that. We hope that it's not. But at the end of the day, baseball has elected to travel, and this is the problem we get. They could have, like the NBA, who's putting players in this bubble, and the MLS, WNBA is doing it. They're putting players in this bubble. 0 people have tested positive for coronavirus since the NBA started. When people have to leave, they quarantine before they have to come back. The players got to Orlando for the NBA restart. They quarantined for 14 days so that we made sure nobody who was coming into the bubble had coronavirus. They stayed in their room the entire time. Food was coming in boxes. We know all the jokes about the food that was happening in the NBA bubble. Regardless, they're playing basketball and nobody's tested positive. Whereas baseball, their season might get shut down. Let's be honest. The season could get shut down for health concerns. Players are going to start saying, I don't know if I want to travel anymore. There could be some players on healthy teams who decide, I've got a wife and kids, or maybe I'm just worried about myself. I'm not playing any more baseball right now until we find a way where we can travel and be healthy. So these games can't get played with these concerns. In the NBA, the WNBA, and the MLS, they're playing games with no fans in a bubble, basically a resort-style tournament in which everyone who entered is healthy, so everyone who's in it is going to stay healthy unless someone breaks the bubble rules. But the NBA has been completely rigid and strict about leaving the bubble. Even someone who had DoorDash delivered had to quarantine for an extra 10 days just in case the driver would have given them coronavirus. Turns out they're fine. But the MLB didn't put these measures in place, and we're going to see the same thing happen with the NFL if they don't figure something out. Because the moment one person gets it, all this traveling and on planes and all this other stuff, a lot of people could get it. And it'll spread from team to team unless otherwise prevented. The Marlins have all these positive tests in baseball. The Phillies could have 20 people positive for COVID-19 for all we know. They probably don't, but they could. So they can't go play tonight. So now that affects the Yankees' schedule. The Marlins not being able to play tonight affects the Orioles' schedule. How does baseball continue with all these teams that are going to have to drop out? And for that record, how long are the Marlins going to have to be out of baseball? Are they going to have to quarantine as a team for 14 days? That's 2 weeks in a condensed 60-game schedule of baseball games missed. The MLB might have to kick Miami out of the season. I mean, they seriously might. I just don't know what else they can consider doing right now other than quarantining the team for a long time or for however long they have to do it. They have to test everyone. This is a PR, health, and just baseball season nightmare for the commissioner. He's got a lot of things to figure out, and to be quite honest with you, he hasn't even said anything yet. He hasn't even said anything addressing the breaking news. I don't know how baseball is going to continue like this. They seriously have to figure something out. But this is all on the fact that they don't have a bubble like the NBA, like Major League Soccer, like the WNBA. The NFL does not either. The UFC has a great bubble. They have an island. Nobody's testing positive for COVID-19 there. And when they do, they're getting kicked out of the fight and they're not fighting. They're probably leaving the island. The UFC got a private location. NBA, private location. WNBA, private location. MLS, private location. The MLB is traveling through over 30 different teams in a bunch of different states. Canada's the only one who said you can't come here. So baseball has a lot to figure out. Commissioner Rob Manfred, good luck. I don't even know what you do now. I really don't. I don't know if they get kicked out the season or if they just quarantine and you eventually bring him back in. This gets to a very dangerous time. I'm expecting a lot of baseball players to start speaking out later today about how crazy this is, about how they're concerned about their own health. Their wives, their kids are probably at home begging them not to travel anymore. I mean, I just don't know how you be safe. These baseball players are going home at the end of the day. They're going home. This is not working. They've got to figure something serious out right now, or else baseball's not going to be able to finish its season.